The Connecticut River Valley Killer, New Hampshire and Vermont, 1978 to 1988. In the pastoral forests and small towns of the Upper Connecticut River Valley, where New Hampshire and Vermont meet, a killer hunted women for over a decade. He struck on back roads, in hospital parking lots, and in isolated rural areas. His victims were often women alone, attacked without warning, and left in wooded areas, often stabbed with shocking brutality. From 1978 to 1988, at least 7 women were murdered in similar ways, and one survivor barely lived to tell her story. Despite multiple jurisdictions, task forces, and suspect sketches, the killer known only as the Connecticut River Valley Killer was never caught. To this day, the region remembers him as a ghost in the pines, elusive, silent, and terrifying. A decade of victims. The earliest suspected victim was Catherine "Kathy" Milliken, 27, a nature photographer from Sunapee, New Hampshire. On October 24, 1978, she visited the Chandler Brook Wetland Preserve to take pictures. The next day, her body was found, stabbed over 29 times, her camera nearby. In July 1981, Mary Elizabeth Critchley, 37, vanished while hitchhiking near I-91 in Massachusetts, heading to Vermont. Her remains were found weeks later in Unity, New Hampshire. The decomposition made cause of death uncertain, but the location matched the emerging pattern. The following year, 16-year-old Bernice Kortmosh went missing while hitchhiking to a hospital in Claremont, New Hampshire. Her remains were discovered 2 years later in the same wooded region. Then came a rush of murders. Ellen Ruth Freed, 26, disappeared in July 1984 after making a call from a payphone. Her remains were found nearly a year later. Eva Morse, 27, went missing in May 1985. Her body surfaced in 1986, also near Unity. Linda Moore, 36, was stabbed to death in broad daylight outside her home in Saxtons River, Vermont, in May 1986. 25 stab wounds, and no one saw a thing. Barbara Agnew, 38, a nurse, disappeared in January 1987 from a Vermont rest area. Her body was found months later in a wooded area in nearby Heartland. Each case shared eerie consistencies: rural locations, sudden attacks, and overkill-style stabbings, typically with a blade. Most of the women were either alone in public or traveling when they disappeared. The survivor, Jane Boroski. The case might have remained a morbid regional legend until the killer made a mistake. On the night of August 6, 1988, 22-year-old Jane Boroski, 7 months pregnant, stopped at a convenience store in West Swansea, New Hampshire. She was approached by a stranger who first pretended to ask about a payphone before pulling a knife and attempting to drag her from her car. When she ran for help, he tackled her and stabbed her 27 times, leaving her for dead before calmly driving away. Amazingly, both Boroski and her unborn baby survived. Boroski gave a detailed description of her attacker: a white male, about 5'10", with dark hair and intense eyes. He drove a dark-colored Jeep Wagoneer. Her account gave investigators a clear profile. This was not a random killer. It was a methodical, confident man, capable of extreme violence and control. She described him as calm, like he'd done it before. A pattern ignored. Despite Boroski's harrowing escape, connecting her case to the earlier murders wasn't immediate. The crimes had occurred over 10 years, in 2 states, and often involved women with varying lifestyles. But as law enforcement finally compared cases, the similarities became undeniable. Geographic profiling narrowed the killer's comfort zone to the Claremont-Springfield corridor, a border region flanked by the Connecticut River. All of the victims had either vanished or were discovered within a 50-mile radius. The FBI was consulted, and a behavioral profile suggested the killer was likely a local, possibly someone working in a trade or traveling profession that gave him access to remote areas. The sketch and suspect. Based on Boroski's description, a composite sketch was released in the late 1980s. Tips poured in, but no arrests were made. One name has surfaced repeatedly in both public and private speculation: Gary Westover, a disabled man who allegedly confessed to relatives before his death in 1997 that he had witnessed the killing of a woman with 3 other men while riding in a van. Another theory points to Michael Niccolo, a Vietnam veteran with PTSD who lived in the area and later moved to Florida, where he killed his wife and daughter before dying by suicide in 2005. His movements allegedly match the timeline and location of the Valley murders, but no forensic link has ever been made. Despite Boroski's detailed account, the suspect was never found. She continues to advocate for renewed attention to the case through interviews and podcast appearances. Why so cold? The Valley Killer case is a textbook example of the challenges of cross-jurisdictional cold cases. Each murder was handled independently, sometimes by small-town departments with limited resources. Claremont PD handled some cases. Vermont State Police handled others. Forensic databases were in their infancy. There was no national DNA registry in the 1980s. By the time connections were made, much of the physical evidence had degraded or been lost. DNA collected at the time, if any, was often insufficient to generate profiles by today's standards. Even the sketch, while helpful, couldn't yield definitive leads without license plate information or more detailed forensic work. Aftermath and silence. The last known attack on Jane Boroski was in 1988. Since then, the Connecticut River Valley killer has disappeared, whether due to death, incarceration, or simply moving on. Some investigators believe he may have been arrested for another crime, unknowingly halting his spree. Others think he was a local who blended in perfectly with the communities he stalked. Decades later, Boroski remains the only known survivor. Her continued advocacy and public retellings have helped keep the case in the spotlight. In 2021, she launched the Invisible Tears podcast to explore her experience and those of other survivors of violence. But, despite the publicity, the case remains unsolved. Still at large. Today, the Connecticut River Valley is still as beautiful and remote as ever. Its highways shaded by pines, its towns quiet and close-knit. But for those who remember the dark years, the landscape carries a chilling undertone. The killer who haunted this region may still be alive, or he may have died long ago, taking the truth with him. Either way, his decade of shadows remains one of New England's most unsettling mysteries. Until someone talks or evidence speaks, the Connecticut River Valley killer is still at large.